throwing eggs, hurling insults, shouting down people who you disagree with, calling them names. That's not what American democracy was supposed to look like, has looked like, nor should it continue to look like. We need to bring civility back into our public discourse now more than ever. But in modern political history, we've never seen anything like we are seeing this year. It's taken decades to get us here. It will take decades for us to move back to the right direction. So we have launched Revive Civility. Our democracy depends on it. And our entire goal is to put out some standards for what people themselves should do as citizens, what candidates should do, and what the media should do. And literally on a weekly basis to push out actions that people can take that will begin to push the needle in the other direction. We're under no illusion that this campaign will not continue to be very negative and undoubtedly continue to give assignations to whole groups of people that are just plain un-American. But we also know that if Americans disengage because of their distress, because of their frustration, it will only get worse. The whole point of this campaign is to help people stay engaged. If this is going to change, it's going to take all of us.
But we have become a very polarized country, not only nationally, but here in Washington, D.C. and in Congress. And polarization really kind of paralyzes us. And discourse that isn't civil makes it even harder. So we need to continue to find compromise and find those solutions in the middle. You know, we've seen a lot of partisanship, petty bickering, and lack of civility that has only grown. And it bothers Gabby a lot. Yes. It's not a good political climate, and we need to focus more on the way we treat each other, and especially in campaigns. And civility takes hard work. It's not easy. I think sometimes it's easier just to be mean and nasty. But for the media, you know, this is something that's on them as well. You know, often I think repeating the candidates' insults is easier than holding people accountable for their words and their actions, and that's not the responsible thing to do. And it's often easier for Americans, the public, to disengage from the political process rather than hold their elected officials accountable. So we need the public to hold people accountable. NICD is going to hold people accountable. And we need members of Congress to step up and act in a civil fashion.
You know, serving in public office, elective office, you learn there is so much diversity. We have 320 million people in this country. The only way you can get together and work and make things happen is if you talk to people who don't necessarily agree with you. If we are to deal as Americans, not as partisans, with the problems that we have, you know, infrastructure is not a partisan issue. Healthcare affects all Americans. You know, the national defense is to protect all of us. But we have had these barriers come up where it's not just in public office. In public office, it's very hard for people who don't agree with each other to even talk to each other, to be seen with each other. But more and more, this is the program, is National Institute for Civil Discourse. It's not just about having members of Congress be civil in their discourse with each other. It's about Americans being civil in their discourse.
Many times in our day-to-day actions, we just see the person and you don't know the story. And through those stories, many times you find commonality. There are things that just kind of reach your spirit, and it makes you look at the person, right? You don't look at the title, you don't hear the title, you actually remember what got them there, and your interaction with them changes. You know, when I don't know you, I can brush you off, right? But when I get you to know you as a person, you're a little bit more respectful. You think before you speak. And so we are really trying to work with our legislators to take the time to get to know one another so that as we are being legislators and making laws and rules for our states throughout the country, we take that into consideration. I'm really looking forward to see where we will go and how we will grow, and not only as legislators but as citizens, because we all have a role in it. We can no longer afford to just say it's someone else's responsibility. We have to be able to challenge and challenge each other to be better, because again, we all want that, but many times we just don't know how to get there. So I'm really grateful to be a part, of this movement, and I'm really looking forward to having all of us take part in to being more civil.
This idea, the seed for this idea, really came from people, from Americans around the country, responding to blogs that I wrote, responding to things that they saw in the media, where they literally were saying, this isn't right, this isn't how we want American democracy to work, we're better than this, but what can we do? So the first request was could we put out some simple, direct standards that really say how candidates and campaigns should behave, what's the media's role in this process, and what can people themselves do? So we did a lot of research. We tested some things, and then we put them out. Our National Board of Advisors voted on them. Some of our focus groups voted on them. Journalists looked at them. And this may be what surprised you. It's really common sense. It's very, very simple in the sense of, in fact, we were almost a little concerned, it sounds so simple. What if it's difficult in this kind of cynical environment to get people to take them seriously? But what we're finding in terms of the people who are joining and signing on is that they're actually delighted and relieved to have somebody put out a small number of very direct statements. Be respectful of others in both speech and behavior. Take responsibility for your own personal behavior and your speech and your actions. Speak what you really believe. Hold to your own integrity, but hold the same level of commitment to listening to other people's beliefs. People really need to be heard and to know they've been heard. So if we disagree, and before I acknowledge that I've understood your position, I just move back at you, of course you're going to push back because you feel like you weren't heard. So we're just trying to get back to that basic element of, yes, I want to speak what I believe, but I want to make sure, and this is the essence of a democratic society, I want to make sure that you, too, have the space to be heard.